Everything that happens has a hidden gift. Have you ever had something terrible happen to you, only to realize years later that it saved you? Tell me, what was it? Was it a breakup, an accident, or like Ethan, a job lost? Comment below. I'll be reading them all. Ethan had always been in control. From a young age, he was the kind of person who had plans, not just dreams. He mapped his career by milestones, measured love by timelines, and calculated risk with surgical precision. He believed life rewarded the prepared, and for a while it did. But on a gray October morning, Ethan's illusion of control shattered. It began with an email, cold, brief, and emotionless. Subject line: restructuring notice. His position was terminated. 15 years of loyalty wiped away with a corporate template and a promise of final paycheck processing. Just like that, he sat frozen in front of the screen. No anger, no panic, just silence. Later that evening, his girlfriend Claire came home to find him sitting in the dark, staring blankly at the wall. She tried to comfort him, but he didn't want comfort. He wanted reason, logic, a why. But the universe is not obligated to explain itself. Days blurred into weeks. Rejection emails piled up. Interviews went nowhere. Friends began to disappear, not out of malice, but discomfort. People don't know what to say to the fallen. Claire, too, began to withdraw. The woman who once said, "I'll love you through anything," now seemed distant, cautious, like a guest in her own home. Ethan couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. His confidence, once his armor had cracked. He started to wonder, had he built his life on the wrong foundation? One cold evening, walking aimlessly through the city to escape the thoughts clawing at his mind, Ethan found himself on an unfamiliar street. Tucked between two shuttered shops was a small temple, quiet, serene, glowing faintly under a single lantern. He paused, not out of curiosity but exhaustion. His feet hurt. His soul hurt more. An old monk sat outside the temple gate, eyes closed, holding a single lotus flower. Ethan was about to walk past when the monk opened his eyes and said, as if they'd known each other forever, "You're carrying something heavy." Ethan chuckled bitterly. "Yeah, it's called a ruined life." The monk didn't flinch. "Sometimes when a house collapses, it reveals the sky." Ethan looked away, unsure whether to be annoyed or intrigued. "I didn't come here for fortune cookie wisdom." "I didn't offer any," the monk smiled gently. "But I do have tea." Perhaps it was the warmth in his voice, or the loneliness gnawing at Ethan's chest, but he followed the monk inside. They sat cross-legged on the temple floor. No prayers, no incense, just silence and steam rising from chipped ceramic cups. The monk sipped his tea and began. "There's an old story in the east. A farmer's horse ran away. The neighbors said, 'Such bad luck.' The farmer replied, 'Maybe.' Days later, the horse returned, bringing 3 wild horses. The neighbors said, 'How lucky.' The farmer again replied, 'Maybe.' His son tried to tame one of the horses, was thrown off and broke his leg. 'What misfortune,' the neighbors said. The farmer, 'Maybe.' Soon after, war came and all the young men were conscripted except the son because of his injury. 'What a blessing,' the neighbors declared. And once again the farmer said, 'Maybe.' The monk paused. Ethan sat quietly, processing. 'So what are you saying?' he asked. 'That losing my job might be good?' 'I'm saying,' the monk replied, 'don't rush to label what you don't yet understand. Some gifts are wrapped in loss.' Ethan stared into his cup. 'It doesn't feel like a gift.' 'Pain rarely does,' the monk said. 'Until it passes, then you realize it carved space for something more sacred.' The monk looked at him closely. 'What What is it you've truly lost? Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came. Was it his job, his identity, his pride, or was it something deeper, the belief that life would go according to plan? I don't know, Ethan finally whispered. Good, the monk said. That means you're beginning to look inward. They sat in silence, and for the first time in weeks, Ethan's breathing slowed. He didn't have answers, but for the first time he didn't feel crushed by the questions. As he left the temple, the monk called out, "You're not being punished, Ethan. You're being guided." "Guided where?" The monk smiled. "You'll see, but only if you walk, not run." Ethan didn't sleep that night, not from worry, but wonder. That story, the farmer, the maybe, it echoed in his mind like a drumbeat. What if the worst thing that had ever happened to him was actually the first step toward his true life? Ethan began waking earlier, not because he had somewhere to be, but because the stillness of dawn started to mean something. He would sit by the window, tea in hand, watching the sun gently break through the fog. He didn't know what came next, but strangely, he no longer feared the not knowing. One morning, he heard a knock at the door. Odd, no one had visited in weeks. Opening it, he saw a man, barefoot, wearing tattered clothes, no jacket in the late autumn chill. His face was thin, but his eyes were clear. "I don't mean to trouble you," the man said softly, "but do you have anything to eat?" Ethan hesitated. He barely had enough food himself, just one sandwich left in the fridge. He almost said no, but then he remembered the monk's words. Pain makes room for something more sacred. So he nodded, turned, and returned with that last sandwich, peanut butter on stale bread. He handed it over without a word. The man took it gently, almost reverently, like it was a treasure. "Kindness," he said, "always returns." Ethan blinked. "What did you say?" But the man had already turned away, walking barefoot down the street, slowly fading into the morning haze. That night, Ethan dreamed. He was standing at the edge of a cliff, lost and alone. Wind howled, rain poured, and just as he was about to fall, a hand reached out and grabbed him. The hand belonged to the barefoot man. Ethan awoke with a jolt, heart racing, his breath shallow, but there were tears in his eyes, not from fear, from something else, something like recognition. The next day, instead of applying to jobs, he walked to the temple. The monk was there, sweeping leaves. Ethan approached quietly. "I gave my last sandwich to a stranger." The monk didn't turn. "You gave when you had nothing. That's when it matters most." Ethan sat beside him. "But I don't know why I did it. It felt important." "It was," the monk said, pausing his sweeping. "Because true giving isn't about abundance. It's about alignment. The world balances itself through the hands of the kind." They were silent a while, watching the leaves fall. Ethan whispered, "Why do I feel like I'm being led?" "Because you are," the monk replied. "But not by chance, by your own karma, by seeds you planted long ago." Ethan thought back to moments he had long forgotten. The woman in the hospital whose prescription he once paid for. The intern he had defended when no one else would. The friend he loaned money to, even when he had little himself. And for a moment, it all started to make sense. He wasn't being punished. He was being remembered. Over the following weeks, Ethan began volunteering at a local shelter. At first, it was awkward. He still felt like he didn't belong. But then came the small things. A smile from a child. A thank you from an old man. A quiet, "You helped me more than you know," from a young woman who had escaped domestic abuse. Each act felt like a thread, slowly stitching his broken self back together. One afternoon, as he was cleaning the temple grounds, he found a pair of shoes, old, worn, left neatly by the front gate. Inside them was a folded piece of paper. It read, "The one who walks barefoot never forgets the ground. Thank you for the bread. May your path now be blessed." Ethan stood still. The wind seemed to hush. Time paused. That man had not been a beggar. He had been a test, or perhaps a teacher. Ethan brought the shoes to the monk. The monk smiled, eyes twinkling. The universe often checks if we've truly learned, by presenting the lesson again in human form. Ethan nodded slowly. Was he sent by? The monk raised a hand. Don't ask who. Ask why. The gift was not in his identity. It was in your decision. That night, Ethan sat by the lotus pond, watching how the blossoms bloomed above the mud. He whispered, maybe the worst things really are doorways. And from somewhere inside him came a peace he had never known, not from achievement, but from surrender. Ethan's days flowed differently now. He no longer counted hours, no longer chased outcomes. He moved slowly, deliberately, like someone who had finally stopped running from his own reflection. There was a peace in purpose, not the kind that comes from achievement, but the kind born in silence, the kind born from watching people heal, just by being heard. But karma, as the monk once told him, is never linear. It ripples, and one ripple from Ethan's past was about to find its way back. It was a late evening. The sky burned with the orange of a dying sun when his phone lit up. Claire. He hadn't seen her since she left months ago. Her name now felt like a distant echo, one that still carried weight. His finger hovered above the screen. He answered. Her voice was soft, hesitant. Ethan, can we talk? They met the next day at a quiet cafe near the river, one they used to frequent. The air was cool, and the wind carried the scent of autumn and old memories. Claire looked different, worn somehow, like someone who had also been undone and reshaped by life. I've been watching you, she said, eyes fixed on her hands. Online. The shelter posted about your work. I saw the photos. Ethan said nothing. I wanted to come sooner, she continued, but I didn't know how. I thought you'd hate me. He stirred his tea slowly. I don't. She looked up. Why? He smiled faintly. Because I'm not who I was when you left. And maybe neither are you. She reached into her purse and handed him an envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten, delicate. The paper carried the faint scent of lavender. It's from my mother, Claire said, her voice breaking. Ethan looked up sharply. Her mother, the woman he had once helped in a hospital waiting room years ago. The woman he never knew had any connection to Claire. The letter read, to the stranger who paid for my medicine without asking for my name, you saved more than my body that day. You saved my heart. I had lost faith in kindness, but you returned it to me. This letter finds you. Know that you are remembered. And I hope that when life tests you, someone will stand by your side, just as you did for me. By the time he finished reading, Ethan's hands were trembling. Claire wiped her eyes. She passed last week. Before she went, she told me, the man who helped me will fall, and when he does, you must be the one to rise for him. Ethan stared at her, 1,000 thoughts flooding his chest. He remembered that night so clearly. The hospital lights, her mother's cough, the fear in her eyes. He had paid quietly, anonymously, not expecting thanks, just because it felt right. And now it had come full circle, a gift hidden in time. He looked at Claire. She was crying, but there was strength in her eyes now, something she hadn't had before. "I'm not asking to start over," she whispered. "I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm sorry." Ethan reached across the table, took her hand gently. "I forgive you," he said, "not because you asked, but because I've learned. Forgiveness frees the one who offers it more than the one who receives it." They sat there, hands entwined in silence. They didn't make promises. They didn't revisit the past. Some things once broken are not meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to be transformed. Weeks later, Ethan returned to the temple. The monk was waiting, sweeping as always. "She came back," Ethan said. "I know," the monk replied. "It hurt," Ethan admitted, "to remember, to feel it all again." The monk paused, leaning on his broom. "Wounds that don't ache were never deep, but pain, Ethan, is a master sculptor. It shapes the soul in ways comfort never could." They watched the lotus pond together. "Did I pass the test?" Ethan asked. The monk smiled. "Life is not a test, it's a teaching, and you, my friend, have started listening." That afternoon, a young man arrived at the temple gates. He looked lost, just as Ethan once did, nervous, hollow. Ethan walked toward him, calm and kind. "First time here?" he asked. The boy nodded. I don't know where else to go." Ethan handed him a broom. "Start here," he said. "Sometimes cleaning what's outside helps you see what's within." And as they swept leaves together, Ethan whispered quietly, not to the boy but to himself, "Everything that happens truly has a hidden gift, but you only find it when you stop asking why me and start asking what now. What moment in your life once felt like a curse, but later revealed itself as a blessing? Your story might inspire someone struggling right now. Leave it in the comments. Do you believe people from your past return for a reason? Or should the past stay in the past? Let's talk honestly. What would you have done in Ethan's place? It's not what breaks you that defines you. It's what you choose to become after.